guys, it's Shannon with Blue Summit Supplies, and today I'm going to show you how I like to cover a corkboard with fabric. So I like to cover corkboards that have this wooden frame. You can get the kind of corkboards that don't have a frame at all, and for that, it's going to be a little bit different. There's a million videos out there for how to do that. I prefer to have the kind that shows the wooden frame. I feel like it looks a little more professional, a little cleaner. Also, if you want to, you can paint the wood if it's your corkboard. If it's not like, I don't know, it doesn't belong to your office, you're not allowed to touch it. But you know, you could paint that first. You're just gonna maybe tape off and cover the corkboard, and then you can spray paint it. These that I bought at the store are actually pretty nice. So I left them. They have like a nice glossy finish on it. And so I'm gonna show you two different ways to cover your corkboard. So one is gonna be a little more permanent. It's gonna require glue. It's gonna have a nice, like I said, like a more permanent finish. It's going to last a lot longer. It's going to be a lot more sturdy. It's not going to be a great option for everybody, because if you are a teacher or in your dorm room or in an office, maybe you can't do something that's more permanent. So I have another option for you that is impermanent, and you can remove it once you leave your office or change your mind. Maybe you want it to look different. I don't know. So let's get started. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what you're going to need. All right, so I have blank corkboard. Obviously, that's what you're going to want to start with. You can get this at bluesummitSupplies.com, or maybe you already have one that came in your office. So like I said, I'm going to show you the two different versions. I think if you're going to buy one at the store that's smaller, the more permanent version is going to be better for you, because you can actually put it down on the table and it's easier to work with. So corkboard, you need one of those to cover it. Obviously, you're going to need your fabric. So what I will tell you about fabric is I recommend using a cotton fabric, so like a quilting cotton or a Kona cotton. You're not going to want something that's got a lot of doodads on it, embroidery, you know, sparkles. You don't want something with a lot of stretch. I wouldn't recommend a faux fur. I think, obviously, I mean, that's just stupid. I don't know why you'd want that anyway. But anyway, so we have this quilting cotton. Decorator fabrics work really well too. And you're just going to want to make sure that you have at least a little bit more than the surface area that you're going to want to cover. I also recommend picking something with like an omnidirectional or multi-directional print. If you get something with stripes or something that has an obvious direction that's straight up and down or across, or like on a grid, that's going to be a lot harder to line up. You can totally do it. It's just going to be a lot easier if you choose something that doesn't have an obvious direction like this one does. So no matter which version you do, whether you're doing the permanent version or the impermanent version, you're going to want a ruler, a big long ruler. If you're doing a really big board, you might want to get like a yardstick or a tape measure. I just have this plastic quilting ruler that I love. And you're going to need something to cut with. So either scissors, like these lovely Blue Summit Supplies scissors. There's a little product plug there. Or I personally love to use a self-healing cutting mat and a rotary cutter. If you do any kind of crafting or quilting, you know that this makes it a lot easier to get everything lined up straight and squared up. And then no matter which one you do, you're also going to need tacks. So just these regular traditional tacks that have like that flat surface on the top. I picked silver. They make ones that are colored, or I guess you could paint them. I don't know. Then if you were going to do the more permanent version, you have a few things you're going to need. You're going to need spray adhesive. Highly recommend that. A glue gun. And some kind of trim. Now, if you're going to do the permanent version, you're going to glue it down. So something that's a cord, like I got this, this is actually, what's it called? A laundry cord. I got it from the hardware section. And it's got a nice plastic interior, but it's like a cotton cord, and that's going to really, I don't know, what's that going to do?
It's going to stay down.
It's going to stay down. It's going to look great. The other option I picked up, and I actually ended up not using, but you might want it if you want a little more natural look, is I have this grass cord. It's like a grass twine. I also thought that was really pretty too. So if you are going to do the impermanent version, though, you don't need any glue. You don't need any hot glue. I do still recommend that you get some kind of a trim. Now, instead of doing a rounded cord, I recommend something flat. Because you're going to tack it down without gluing it. So something flat is going to be a lot easier than a round cord. So I have this really pretty ribbon. I just got it out of my stash, just like a 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch, 3/8 inch wide. And then you're going to need a stapler. And the kind of staple you're going to want to make sure you get is the kind that opens up flat like this so that you can staple down. All right, so that's everything that you need. Let's get started. All right, so the very first thing you're gonna wanna do is measure your corkboard. So what we're gonna measure on a framed corkboard is the distance inside, like, so just the cover of the corkboard, so between the frames, right? And because typically these corkboards, they're not gonna be the most perfect things in the world, right? They're not made out of metal that's not gonna warp or move. So a lot of times it might be a little narrower at one end than the other. So what I recommend doing is measuring at 3 different points. So measuring maybe at one side, in the center, and then at the end, and kind of taking the average of those. And then, so I've already done this. Where are my measurements? So it was about 21¼ inch across by 15¼ inches width. When in doubt, go on the bigger side because you can always trim down, but you cannot put fabric back where you have cut it off. So go on the bigger side. I'm gonna move this board out of the way. And I have already trimmed down my square of fabric to 21¼ by 15¼ I think is what I said. So I don't know why I moved this out of the way. I need it. Let's put it back up here. So then you're going to lay your fabric on top. And like I said, it's not gonna be exact because these corkboards are never perfect. So you can see where it's basically right. It's a tiny bit too wide on both sides. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna trim off a tiny little bit. It does not have to be 100% perfect, but I do think that you need to go a little bit at a time just in case. So like I said, you can use scissors. If you're gonna use scissors, I recommend turning this over to the wrong side, using your ruler, marking it with a pencil, and then cutting that out with your scissors. But because I have a rotary cutter, because I'm fancier than you, I am just going to do it this way. If you're gonna use a rotary cutter, make sure that you are not using a wooden ruler because your rotary cutter blade is very sharp and it will cut off your ruler. So use these plastic rulers that are made specifically for use with a rotary cutter. Now, I have trimmed this down. I'm gonna check it again and it should fit nicely and neatly inside. It looks absolutely beautiful, but it's still a little bit too long. So I'm gonna go trim that off and I'll be back. Check her out. She is ready to go. So like I said, it does not have to be absolutely perfect. That is why we have the trim that we're gonna use around the edges later. What you don't want is for this to be bunching up and you don't want it to be super far away from the edge. I mean, I guess if you were super far away from the edge, you just use extra trim and cover it up. So really, it's really hard to mess this up. So then what I'm gonna do for my permanent version is I'm going to take my fabric away, spray the backside of this with some spray adhesive. And this part is really useful if you have a friend to help you hold one side of this as you lay it down. So now's a good time to go grab somebody to help you. All right, so I'm gonna spray this and I need hands. So you hold those corners and I will hold these corners. And we're just gonna try to get it as close to the corners as possible. And one person should go first. So this has spray adhesive on it, so it's gluing in place. All right, look at her, she's beautiful. Now the good thing about most spray adhesive is you can reposition it if you need to before it fully sticks. So if it's not exactly right, most spray adhesive is repositionable 2 or 3 times before it's really gonna be permanent. I should have cut off a little more down here, but that's okay. All right, so then you're gonna flatten this guy out. She's ready, she's beautiful. So I'm gonna move this out of the way. Next thing you're gonna do is get your trim, which is here. So because this kind that I got had a little bit of a, it had silicone on the inside or plastic or something, I used my lighter to burn it a little to keep it from fraying. I'll show you how to do that in a second. But you're gonna start at one corner and you're just gonna use a thin bead of hot glue all around and go just in sections. So I'll do a few inches and a few inches and a few inches. And then when you get to the corner, move this over so you can see a little better, you're gonna go as tightly in the corner as you can to make a nice corner, right? So I'm gonna glue this down and I'll see you when I'm done with that. Oh, Here, I'm gonna show. So I'm gonna get in trouble for using an open flame in the office, but you can see how there's a little bit of plastic on the inside, and you can see where it's already raveling. So what you can do is you can light it just a tiny little bit and then blow it out all the way. And then it's really not super hot, don't burn yourself, but you can just kind of pinch it to make sure it's not like just splaying out everywhere, right? So now it's not going to unravel. Now I've got my hot glue gun, and like I said, I'm gonna start at one corner. Should I move it over a little? Start at one corner and kind of just do a thin line. And then start sticking this down. I'm pushing it down to the edge of the frame so it's nice and tight against the edge, and see how like all my little imperfections, it's just covering up. Love it. Okay, so now I've taken my rope and glued it down all the way around the corners, and you can see here at this final corner, I basically just figured out where it was gonna end, trimmed it off, did a quick burn with my lighter to make sure that those ends aren't gonna fray, and stuck it right down. So then to finish, it's really simple. All you're gonna do is take these little flathead tacks and stick them in over the corners, and that will kind of cover up where the ends meet. And you're gonna do that at each corner, and you'll have a nice finished look. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to do, I think I already told you that, an impermanent version. So this doesn't require any glue. This is great for if you work somewhere or you live somewhere where you have a corkboard that maybe is already installed and you can't put anything permanent on it. Or maybe you just change your mind a lot, which is also cool. So I've already trimmed my fabric down to size, and I'm laying it on top of my board, smoothing everything out. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is please iron your fabric before you start doing this. I realize that it is a pain to add that extra step, but it takes 2 minutes, and I promise it will make this look so much better when you're done. So the other thing that I really recommend is using starch and starching your fabric after you iron it. That's gonna make it a lot easier to handle, and it's also gonna, again, make it hold up a lot longer and lay a lot flatter. So now that I have mentioned that, I think that is particularly useful in this case where you're not gluing anything down because you want that fabric to lay flat as much as possible. So I've got this down, I have my stapler that opens up, and all I'm gonna do is go around the edge, and as close as I can to the edge, I'm gonna staple it flat all the way around the outside. Voila! So we're all stapled down around the edges. Next, it's time to cover up around the edge. So again, I said that I recommend, instead of using a cord for this, using a flat ribbon, and that's so that you can more easily cover up your staples. So you're gonna start close to one end. I'm just gonna trim this off. You're gonna start close to one end and let it hang off a little bit, but don't tack anything down yet. You're gonna start tacking down at your second corner. So what you're gonna do, am I in frame here? Can you see that okay? So what you're gonna do in the corner is kind of fold it over like this. There's nothing fancy here. I've literally just folded it over as best I can, and then we're gonna tack it down with one of these flat tacks. We're gonna do when we get down to the end. I am gonna trim this off right at the corner. And same for this guy. And they're just gonna overlap in the corner, and I'm gonna tack it down. So we're basically done. If you have a larger corkboard than this, you may want to add some additional tacks along the edge, just kind of evenly spaced out, because otherwise it may start hanging. And if you do add additional tacks, that can give you a little extra pocket where you can slip a picture or something like that. So we're all done. All right, so we're all done. I hope this was really helpful. Again, I like this version of covering corkboards where you can still see the frame because you can customize it. And if you do this impermanent version, which my friend Grace here, who's recording, has already said that she wants for her house. You can switch it out as much as you want. Honestly, it's probably pretty easy to switch out this guy too. The more permanent one, you just pull everything off. You might have to peel off that hot glue, but it should come off pretty easily, so you can redo that to your heart's content. So to find more information and written instructions for this, hit up our website at bluesummitsupplies.com. You can find more corkboard ideas on our blog. You can pick up some great scissors like I was using, a stapler, and corkboards. And thanks for coming along.